Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Society's most valued human traits often disappear with age. Youth, beauty, mobility, health, cognitive function, just to name a few. What do we receive in exchange? Becoming obsolete. Our hard-earned wisdom is being discarded because of undesirable packaging at a time when the world most needs it. We can only avoid this obsolescence by embracing and engaging the power of elderhood. Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the Exxon Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to explore the power of elderhood is Ron Pevny. Ron has dedicated 40 years to assisting people in negotiating life's transitions as they create lives of purpose and passion. He's founding director of the Center for Conscious Eldering, which for 20 years has presented workshops and retreats across North America to support people in bringing purpose, growth, and commitment to service into their elder years. Ron is the author of Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, Claiming the Gifts of Elderhood. His website, centerforconsciouseldering.com. Ron, thanks so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Gwilda. It's an honor to be with you today.
It's so nice to have you back on. We always have a good time. So unless we die young, we all grow old. But what's conscious eldering?
Well, we can just drift into getting old, or we can choose to age intentionally with a commitment to using these precious latter years of our life as an opportunity for growth and for service and for deep fulfillment. Conscious eldering is a commitment to choosing to grow whole as we age, rather than just to grow old.
This might seem silly, but doesn't that make crossing a little simpler when we don't have so much baggage?
Well, say that one more time, Gwilda.
I said this might be off base, but does doing this work, this elder work, so that we move through our issues and become more present, doesn't that also aid come time to die, time to cross? You don't have so much baggage?
Oh, it definitely does. It definitely does. And I think that all of the world's wisdom traditions that I know of will say that the moment of our passing, leaving this life, the biggest passage we're going to experience in this life, is a critical moment in terms of us preparing for whatever is next. I don't know what's next, but to not have a heavy load of old baggage, to go with a light heart, without a lot of baggage, a lot of accumulated karma from this life, definitely prepares us for whatever the next journey is, to have the most pleasant and blessed journey possible moving forward.
So how did you first become aware of the possibility of conscious eldering?
I had spent many years helping people to move through life transitions. That's been my calling. That's been my work for a long time. And I led a lot of retreats. I led a lot of wilderness vision quests to help people move through transition. But eldering was never really on my radar screen until I got into my early 50s. And I began to realize that I was not feeling like I was 30 anymore. And I was not immortal. And I began to see that a lot of my ways of being and approaching life that had pretty much been my way up until my early 50s perhaps weren't going to serve me that well without me examining them and seeing how I wanted to live as I aged. And I had the good fortune, Gwilda, to have some incredible wise elders come into my life. Two in particular, Ann Roberts and Wes Burwell, were 15 years older and a lot wiser than me. But they knew that I had a strong history and a lot of skills helping people use rites of passage to move through transition. And they asked if I would help them to create a program that would serve as some kind of a rite of passage to help people move from midlife adulthood into their elder years. And so it was kind of at their feet, helping them and learning from them, and then having some other incredibly wise mentors along the way to serve as guides and models, that I began to see that this, in the latter part of my life, my calling to help others move through transition really needed to focus on this transition into elderhood. And so I spent the good 20 years using whatever skills I've accumulated to help support people in making this transition with joy and with grace and with fulfillment and with eager anticipation, rather than viewing their aging just with dread and seeing it as a time just of loss and diminishment.
Seems like our society wants to stop at 30. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All the media and advertising and this and that. After 30, your value starts to decline, right? Particularly if you're female. So, but the indigenous people aren't like that. The ones that I've known, the ones that I've studied about, they, to a one, revered their elders. What happened?
Well, you are definitely right. Throughout most of human history, elderhood has been an honored and an important role in cultures around the world. Elders were seen as offerings, having so much to offer to the community. And but that was in a different world than we live in now. And the world we live in now honors and glorifies what is new, honors and glorifies youth, honors and glorifies the kind of productivity that benefits the economy, if you will. And we have lost sight of the importance of the kind of wisdom and bigger picture perspective and commitment to the well-being of future generations. That has always been the role of the elder. We've lost sight of that. But thank God, Gwilda, we're beginning to gain sight of that again. Things are beginning to change. I'm really confident that elders are going to again occupy an honored role in our society at some point.
Well, when we surplused them, it left a gaping hole, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. There's a gaping hole in not knowing what to do with millions of people reaching so-called retirement years. And I think we all know that so much of what we see in the media doesn't acknowledge the gifts of elderhood and the contributions elders can make to our society, but it basically focuses on how elders are going to be a financial drain. They're going to bankrupt our society. And what do we do with them? And how are we going to find enough nursing homes for them? And all those are important issues. But more important is seeing the wonderful gifts that we elders can bring to our society. But we're not going to be able to bring them if we are just getting old and we decide, okay, I'm an elder because I've got gray hairs. Growing into elderhood, as people have known throughout history, as cultures have known, is a commitment. It's a process. It takes inner work for a lot of years to do the kind of inner growth that enables us to really shine our light as elders when we get to this age.
Don't wait. Start now, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So I know personally, I can look back at who I was when I was 20, 30. It's like a whole different human being, like a whole different species, actually.
Yeah.
There's such a huge difference between the personalities, so much is different. And yet some people don't change all that much. How can we use that difference and still communicate with the people that aren't changing that much?
Well, there is a big gap in the world we live in now between older adults and younger people, a huge generation gap. But I have talked to so many younger people, Gwilda, who say that they yearn to have some models for what elderhood can be, to have some older people that they can look up to and admire and aspire to be like when these younger people get older, rather than just seeing a bunch of older people who are just living for themselves, just living to play after they retire. They're looking for older people who have a commitment to the well-being of our world, toward their generation, toward future generations. They're looking for that. They're looking for mentors. And they're not all going to tell you that. But there are so many instances where all it takes is just almost like a brief, meaningful interaction between a younger person and an elder. And all of a sudden that gap is bridged and there's a deep mutual respect. And the young people really, really honor and feel good to be with the elder, but it's not a one-way thing. Because we elders have so much to yearn from the particular energies and enthusiasm and idealism of younger people. We need each other.
Well, it's time for us to take a station break. Ron and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Whatever happened to the concept of revering elders? This is Mission Evolution, and with us this hour to examine aging is Ron Pevny, the author of Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, Claiming the Gifts of Elderhood. Ron, how do conscious eldering differ from positive aging, successful aging, healthy aging, etc.?
Well, I would begin by saying, Gwilda, that I think it is a real positive that healthy aging, successful aging, positive aging, there's a million different names, successful aging, a million different names for a growing acknowledgement that older people don't have to just sit on the couch and disappear. And so there's so many things that are available now to help older people age well, in terms of what we know about lifestyle choices that promote health, what we know about exercise, what we know about the importance of having others in our lives, not being isolated. There's so many of these kind of things out there that are valuable, and I think they're important. But what they are missing, and what conscious eldering contributes, is a focus on the inner growth of us as we age. Because a lot of people who've embraced positive aging are really, they're trying to live as long as they can, as if they were 50 years old, and continue to do as much as they can and be active and be vital. And that's good. But the fact is that in the human psyche, there is a call to a certain kind of growth toward the life stage of elderhood that happens around retirement age. And that growth is an inner growth. It's a whole different orientation toward life, toward how we see ourselves, toward how we see our role in the community. That orientation, I think, is critical. So the question is not just, what am I going to do as I get older? But who is this person who's going to be doing it? What am I going to be like? How am I going to deal with the inevitable losses that come, the diminishments that come? How am I going to find meaning and purpose when I'm not able to be out there doing the stuff where I'm active, that positive aging is so much about. And that's, I think, what conscious eldering's unique and important contribution is. It adds so much to this larger positive aging paradigm.
As we age in this society, we get a lot of bumps and bruises, emotional traumas,
Yeah.
physiological traumas. And every time we do that, we diminish. Okay, if we don't go back and correct the problem, to where by the time we reach elderhood, we see our diminishment as just part of our aging rather than things we've lost and need to go back and correct. How can we reframe that so that we don't just say, oh, well, I'm just getting old and therefore I have to plan on not being able to think as clearly, daddy, 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 when indeed some of those things have to do with our damage and patterns rather than aging?
Mm-hmm. Well, diminishments are real, and you'll find a lot of people out there who would glorify aging as this great life stage that can be all joy and all fun and all pleasure without diminishment. That is not reality.
Yeah, tell that to my arthritis, right?
Yeah, that's right. Excuse me. Excuse me. Diminishment is going to happen. But conscious eldering's message is so much about how to allow ourselves to let go of that which we can't hold on to anymore, knowing that it's the nature of life to bless us with wonderful new gifts. You know, the old adage, when one door closes, new doors open. And there are so many doors that can open in elderhood that are in a lot of ways unique to elderhood, but that they only can happen when we have suffered some of the losses of those things that have tied us and tied our identity to who we used to be. But as we suffer those losses, it allows the spirit within us, which in many ways I think is the essence of true eldering. It allows the spirit to shine forth more and more because we're not attached to these things that we used to identify with.
It's my former father-in-law. He's crossed now, but he always said, if you're going to retire, retire to something.
Yes, yes.
And so, what's your take on that? What's your take on what we can retire to that'll help us move towards conscious eldering?
Well, I think what's most important, I think the theme of purpose is vital here. I think that at any point in our life, and maybe even more so in our later years, in our elder years, Gwilda, purpose is vital to our well-being. And there are so many studies and so much research that has been done that has made the national media about the importance of having purpose. Purpose is what keeps the life force flowing. Purpose is what keeps our energies flowing. Purpose is what gives us a reason to get up in the morning. And all those are what enables our elder light to shine as we age. Maybe the most famous study was done by Becca Levy of the Yale School of Public Health, and many people have seen this in the media. She studied people in their midlives who she asked them a series of questions and then did it every year for several years until they began to get into their 70s and 80s, and asked them about what they believe about their aging, and do they believe they can age well? And do they believe that their life can have a purpose or a meaning as they age? And she found that those who believe that their lives can be a time of thriving and a time of purpose, on average, are living 7.5 years longer than those who feel that aging is just all about loss and decline and loss of relevance and loss of purpose. So purpose is so incredibly, incredibly important. And conscious eldering is so much about offering people some tools that can help them to find that sense of purpose that can sustain them in their elderhood and be their gift to the society around them in their elderhood.
It seems like, everybody talks about finding your gift, finding your passion, finding your purpose.
Yeah.
And yet, does that purpose change as we go through different life transitions?
Yeah, I think our experience of our purpose changes, even though I believe that in the bigger picture, we don't come into this life as a blank slate. I believe that we come into this life with a purpose that our soul carries with it. And that purpose finds different expressions as we move through our lives. And the expression of that purpose when we are younger will probably be a very different expression than it is when we are in our elderhood. But then there are many people, and that's one of the problems with living in a society like ours that has so much lost touch with our soul, I think, and is so secular. So many younger people choose their careers and their work not out of a sense of purpose, but out of a sense of what can make me the most money, what can best help me to survive and to get ahead. But however we were raised, as we enter our elder years, it's a new opportunity to look within and see what is it in me that wants expression, that feels most alive, that makes me feel most alive. And how can I bring that aliveness into my elder years? And we're not going to sit down just, with a pencil and paper and take a couple inventories or go to a weekend workshop and discover our sense of purpose. It takes some work, but we can find it. And when we do, it makes all the difference in how we age.
Can you find your sense of purpose by going backwards and seeing this thread that runs through your life?
I think you definitely can. You can ask yourself, what made me feel most alive as I look at the different chapters of my life? And this is one of the gifts of life review, which is so important in any kind of conscious aging. What made me feel most alive? And I'm not talking now just what gave me the biggest thrill, because there is a difference. I think any of us who are at all conscious know there's a difference between just what gives me a temporary thrill and what gives me kind of a sense of true vitality and aliveness. So we can look and see what made me feel most alive throughout my work life. What was I doing? What was I contributing? That can give some clues as to ways we can bring those particular gifts into the situation of our elderhood. May not be the same work situation, probably won't, but there's so many opportunities to be of service, and finding those opportunities that most bring us alive is, I think, a real key to having purpose and to thriving as elders.
It sounds like conscious eldering involves a lot of introspection.
Oh, it definitely does. Introspection, quiet. That's something that our society does not value. I think we all know that. But if we're going to commit to any kind of growth, especially in our elder years, we need to have quiet so we can hear that still small voice within, the voice of our deepest, most authentic inner knowing as it speaks to us. And it shows us and gives us clues as to how we can thrive in our elder years. We need quiet.
It's time for another station break. Ron and I will be back to continue our discussion, so stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Aging. Is resistance futile? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're discussing a different perspective on aging with Ron Pevny. His website, centerforconsciouseldering.com. We tend to have been conditioned into seeing old age as a time of decline, and a decline in our usefulness, a decline in our purpose, a decline in our health. It's all about the decline.
Yeah.
Um, but if we're going to be conscious elders, how can we reframe that into what you were saying before we went into the break about bringing our purpose into into elderhood?
Well, I think the most important reframing we can do, Gwilda, is to do our best to begin to see our life, our whole life journey, as a journey of growth that goes through various stages and various experiences and various learnings and various levels of understanding. And if we allow ourselves to really spend some time in the introspection you talked about, doing life review, and conscious eldering has various tools for doing life review. If we allow ourselves to do that, we can begin to see how the experiences we've had are tied together by a certain thread. There seem to be certain themes that appear and reappear in our lives that are themes that show a journey of growth. We don't just have a whole bunch of experiences randomly, but I believe that our lives are a journey of growth tied together by some threads given by spirit that maybe we carry in our soul when we're born. But all these experiences have contributed to our growth. And we see that when we get to the point where our working careers are largely over, at least the way we have understood them, that it is a new life stage that has meaning. That we weren't placed on this earth to have a bunch of experiences and a work life, then all of a sudden to be left meaningless as soon as we reach retirement age. We see that the things that happen to us in our aging can all be contributors to our growth and our understanding. And in fact, our elderhood can be, I truly believe, all those teachers that I so admire have taught and embodied, that our elderhood can be the pinnacle of our emotional and our spiritual growth, even as various other abilities fall off, as they inevitably will.
How can okay, so a person's plugging along and their intention is to consciously age and to enter into elderhood, and but we're brought up believing in this world of decline. So what are some of the signs and symptoms that a person has to throw up red flags that says you're sliding back into the paradigm that society would have about getting older, rather than the one that you care to embrace? What are some of the signs that we're sliding back into the old way of being?
Well, I think there are a lot of strong forces that try to shove us and to keep us in the old paradigm of aging. And oftentimes, Wilda, we talk about ageism, and thank God ageism is being revealed for being the painful, wounding thing that it is. But the ageism isn't just out there. We've internalized so much of it from when we were little kids. It's all the messages we got. And so if we find ourselves, for instance, if somebody were to ask you how old you are, most people would feel that is an intrusive question or a rude question or an inappropriate question. But what I do, and the people that I work with really try to do, is to proudly say, hey, in my case, I'm 76 years old. I feel that reflects a life of experience and growth and meaning and some service to the world that I can be proud of, rather than something that I have to be ashamed of. And so it's a good question to ask ourselves, as honestly as we can, do we really believe that aging is something to be honored and elderhood something to be honored? Or do we really believe that elderhood is a time of irrelevance and isolation and increased invisibility. What do we really, really believe? And I would say that if we find that we're carrying a whole lot of these negative stereotypes, one of the best ways I know to refute them or to transform them is to make a point of looking around at models of people that we consider vital elders, that we admire. Look at them, see what they're doing, see how they are. Ask ourselves, are some of those qualities that we can incorporate into our lives? And by doing that, we'll see that aging doesn't necessarily have to just be about loss, but it can be about loss and incredible growth.
So, what about the tendency that we have to identify with our age and to identify with the archetypes that we've been sold as to what you're supposed to be, look, feel like as you reach said years?
Well, there is a strong, I think we all know that we are social beings. And social beings we're wired to accept the beliefs and attitudes of the society around us. We're wired that way. And so it really is not easy to step outside of the dominant paradigm, whether it has to do with eldering or many of the other topics and themes that your guests talk about on your show. When you're stepping outside the paradigm, it is difficult. And that's why it is so vital when we're going to try to make any significant change, and I'm talking now in particular about our eldering, that we look for and do our best to find a community of kindred spirits, other people who share our aspirations, who share our vision, our intuitions about what life can be, what aging can be, and we have them as a community to support us. Because if we have them as a community, then we've got lots of reinforcement for not buying into and being hijacked by the dominant disempowering paradigms all around us. We need community.
A lot of people are kind of hoping that our society, our laws, our mores will start to value the elders again. But isn't it really up to the elders to create that?
I think ultimately it is. And that's why people like me and others have dedicated our lives and our work to trying to help people embrace an elderhood and a willingness to proudly live their elderhood, to serve as models. And if we can serve as models for younger people, then they're going to see the rich possibilities of all stages of the life journey, including the elder years, rather than at very, very early ages, internalizing all these beliefs that old people are just, frail and, and just out for themselves and whatever. We have to serve as the kind of models that the world needs. And we have to particularly see in these times when so much crisis and so many needs out there for some true wisdom. Younger people need to see that there are people out there who have some wisdom and who care about the future and future generations, who are willing to step up. And we're the ones who can do that if we embrace the possibilities of our elderhood.
And there's a lot of possibilities therein, isn't there?
Oh, there are.
I mean, we've grown old, and as we've done so, we've had all these experiences that give us a much broader perspective. How can we come from that broader perspective and still meet the younger people where they're at?
I think one of the main things we can do, Gwilda, is to be authentically ourselves. And we see so many older people who think that the only way I'm going to connect with younger people is to act like I am 20 or 30. And that doesn't mean, that we don't want to get to know and understand their lives, but to be authentically who we are, I think, is what young people are looking for, because young people want to learn how to be authentically who they are. And so I think that's a starting place to be authentically who we are. And then the other thing is to make a point of looking for opportunities to interact with younger people. There's a whole movement now, and there's so many different projects around that stress the importance of intergenerational collaboration. And I know a program in Boulder, Colorado, started by a dear friend of mine named Jack Williamson, that brings together college students and elders in the community, and they take courses together and they learn about each other and they write each other's life stories. There's a million different, there are all kinds of social justice and environmental action programs that are bringing together elders and younger people and giving them a chance to see that each generation, each stage of life has particular gifts and that they need each other. But living in and just isolating ourselves in elder communities without having young people in our life makes it almost impossible to truly live and embrace and manifest the role of elder, because elder by definition involves a relationship with younger people.
Well, it's that time again. We're going to have to take another station break. Please stay with us as Ron and I continue to explore the benefits of conscious elderhood. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. So how do we fix this? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion on valuing aging with Ron Pevny. His website, centerforconsciouseldering.com. Rob, what does conscious eldering have? You mentioned nature. Let me back up a little. You mentioned nature, that is important. What's important for elders and being in nature?
Well, I think it's not a meaningless coincidence that modern society, in which most people are so removed from deep experiences of the natural world, is a society where we have lost touch with the spirit in us, with the soul in us, with many of the understandings about the nature of life and progression through stages. We've lost touch with that, whereas societies throughout history that have honored elders have seen that all living things go through stages and every part of life has meaning. We've lost touch with that. When we've lost touch with it, in many ways, we've lost touch with our doorway, our entryway to the voice within us that is most authentic and true and natural. And when we're surrounded by, and our lives are predominantly influenced by human-made structures and institutions, then the voices that we've internalized and that speak to us all the time, and that in so many ways dominate our lives, are the voices of society and culture and what we're supposed to be, who we should be, how we should be. The natural world reminds us of what is most true and natural in us. And it's where most people can best hear that voice, that voice of spirit, that inner voice that tells them, these are your gifts. This is how to serve. This is your place in the larger whole. And so it's so important, I believe, especially if we aspire to a conscious elderhood, to give ourselves a bunch of time in the natural world, away from man-made noise, to be quiet, let nature speak to us, and attune ourselves to something much bigger than we're able to when we're in our normal secular daily lives.
So, are there lessons to be learned in nature that could really help with eldering? Like listening to you, and I'm thinking, okay, what we do with elders in our society right now is like if all of a sudden all we had was spring, summer, and fall with no winter.
Yeah,
If we didn't have that composting time and gathering, harvesting and composting, we wouldn't have a spring next year. I mean, nothing would grow. And isn't that kind of what we're doing to our people?
yeah, that's one of the biggest lessons. Uh, Nature teaches us that the very essence of life is endings and beginnings. And nature has taught societies around the world, and that's what their rites of passage have been grounded in, a realization that in order to have a new beginning, there's always a time when there has to be an ending. There has to be a letting go, and then an in-between time. Some people call it liminal time, some call it the fertile void, some call it the neutral zone. But a time when everything is hibernating, when we're just waiting. We're not who we have been, and we're not who we're going to become. And we're willing to wait and allow things to just gestate in their own way with some support from us, keeping an open mind and open heart until the next chapter is ready to emerge. That is a big learning. The other big learning, I think, from being in the natural world is that you can't be there if you really try to have an open heart and to be out there, not just goal oriented, to climb this peak or to go fishing or hunting. If you spend time just being there, opening yourself to nature, you begin to have a visceral experience, not just conceptual, visceral experience of our interconnectedness with all of nature, with all of creation, with each other. And it's that lack of realizing our connectedness that is what enables us to exploit nature, to see it just as a resource, something rather than something that we are intimately connected to. It shows us that interdependence in a way that cannot happen unless we allow ourselves to be in the natural world.
So, if we're really spending time in nature and paying attention to the interconnectedness of all things, can that help us rediscover our interconnectedness with society at large?
Oh, I think it definitely can, because that sense of interconnectedness is a sense of interconnectedness with all life and all beings, of which human beings are a major part of that whole picture of life. We can't just be out there and see the connection between us and the ferns and the squirrels and the deer. We see the interconnection of all of us, including humans, interdependent. We all need each other. We need the natural world. It's all one. And the more time we could spend there and having that experience viscerally, the easier it is to see what our unique contribution might be, what our special gifts might be to helping to support the greater whole. And that's why I think it's so important to give ourselves time in nature when we're looking for a sense of purpose, to get out there and to just listen and feel and see what emerges. That's a critical component of conscious eldering, I believe.
Well, it's that time of the show, and I get to ask you, Ron, what's your mission?
My mission for a long time has been to help people to use life transitions as an opportunity for growth and forward movement and service. And now for the last 20 years, and I think until the day I take my last breath in some way or other, Gwilda, my mission is going to be to help people see that the final chapters of their life can be a time of richness and fulfillment, and maybe the pinnacle of becoming who they can be. That's so important to me. I try to live that. because if I'm not living it, I don't feel I have any legitimacy or credibility in teaching it. I try to live it, to serve as a model for others, and through my writing, my workshops and retreats to help touch others with that mission.
That's a beautiful mission because we really need it now. And this is a time when we really need the wisdom of the elders. It's
Yeah.
so much chaos. And there, we can't base the future on what we've seen in the recent past
Mhm.
because everything's unprecedented. But as you've been older and you've seen more of the past, cycles start to form that you can, oh, this, and you can kind of see down the road, where
Yeah.
somebody that's young that hasn't lived through those cycles doesn't. I remember my father. He's, bless his heart, he's crossed now, but he said, "Gigi," that's what he always called me. The world's going to hell. There's either going to be a war or a depression or both. Well, he missed the pandemic, but he was pretty
Mhm.
right on. And the reason he was is even as he became senile, he could still see these patterns that he'd lived through. He was at the Battle of the Bulge, in
Yeah.
Normandy. So he lived a lot of living, and that gave him the ability to almost be precognizant. Do you believe that that's something that elders can contribute? And if so, how can we start to validate it again?
Well, I believe that's one of the biggest gifts we can give to younger people, because, as you say, younger people haven't seen all the patterns. And so it's easy to get caught up on either this is the worst thing that could possibly happen and it's irrevocable, or this is the best thing and it's never going to change. And elder people see that it's all a flow. It's all a process. There are cycles. They see that there is a certain balance in the universe that we may not be able to see at times, especially in times of crisis like we're in now, but there are balancing forces, spiritual forces, forces in the human psyche that are seeking, that are seeking to balance the crises. We can serve as beacons of hope for our society, and not just kind of empty, shallow hope, but true hope that there are forces at work in this universe that we don't have control over, and we can trust them. And it's our job to do our part to support those forces by giving our gifts as elders as best we can. If there's a huge amount of darkness, we can each shine our light as bright as we can, and enough of those lights can dispel a heck of a lot of the darkness.
Well, here's for standing for light in the darkness, no less.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, Ron, we're out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure talking with you, Gwilda. I
It
think.
always is. It always is. You take care now and keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Our guest this hour has been Ron Pevny, founding director of the Center for Conscious Eldering and author of Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, Claiming the Gifts of Elderhood. To find out more about Ron, where you can find his book and all he has to offer, visit his website, centerforconsciouseldering.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right here next time, as this mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to an evolving world.